Captain Lee Daho stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, watching the stars through the main view screen. The exploration vessel had been his home for 3 years now, carrying a crew of 200 as they mapped the outer edges of human space. Today was supposed to be routine, just another day of scanning empty systems and recording stellar data. That changed when the space around Earth's moon began to shimmer. "Captain," called Communications Officer Park, Minji from her station. Her voice carried a note of worry that made Daho turn immediately. "I'm reading massive energy signatures appearing near Luna Base." Daho moved to stand behind her chair. The readings on her screen made no sense. Energy levels that high should have torn space apart, yet somehow they remained stable and controlled. "How many ships?" he asked. Minji's fingers danced across her console, trying to get clearer readings. "I can't tell, sir. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases." The view screen flickered and changed to show the space near Earth's moon. What Daho saw made his breath catch in his throat. Massive shapes were materializing out of nothing. Ships longer than Earth's largest space stations, their hulls dark as midnight, but somehow gleaming with inner light. They moved with impossible grace for objects so huge. "Get me Fleet Command," Daho ordered. Before Minji could respond, more ships appeared. Then more. Within minutes, dozens of alien vessels surrounded Earth's orbital space. They made no aggressive moves, but their size alone was intimidating. Each ship could have carried millions of beings. "Sir," Minji said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're hailing us." "All human vessels?" "No, sir, just us. Specifically us." Daho felt a chill run down his spine. Of all the ships in Earth's fleet, why would alien visitors single out Soul's Pride? They were explorers, not warriors. Their weapons were minimal, their crew mostly scientists and engineers. "Put it through," he said. The bridge fell silent. Everyone waited to hear the first words from another species. What came through the speakers was not what anyone expected. The voice was deep and ancient, like wind through mountain caves. But there was something else in it. Something that sounded almost like sadness. "Small vessel of the young ones," the voice said in perfect Earth standard. We seek those who dream." Daho stepped forward. As captain, first contact protocols made this his responsibility. "This is Captain Lee Daho of the Earth vessel Soul's Pride. Who are you?" "We are Drakmori. We have traveled far. We search for—" The voice paused as if struggling for words. "For those who still see wonder." Before Daho could respond, the bridge doors opened. Park Minji's daughter Nari ran in, her school tablet clutched in her small hands. The 8-year-old girl often visited during slow periods, and today she had been attending virtual classes in the ship's education center. "Mom?" Nari called out, not noticing the tense atmosphere. "My tablet's acting funny. It keeps showing pretty pictures of space dragons." Everyone turned to look at the child. Her tablet screen displayed images that definitely had not been in any human database. Swirling shapes that looked almost alive, moving through star fields with impossible beauty. "Nari, not now," Minji whispered urgently. But it was too late. Somehow the child's tablet had connected to the ship's communication system. Her voice had just been transmitted to the alien fleet. The response was immediate and shocking. A different voice came through the speakers. This one trembled with something that could only be called reverence. "A young one," it whispered. "We hear a young one." Nari looked around at all the adults staring at her. She was used to being the only child on the ship, and she had learned to be comfortable with adult attention. But this felt different. She walked over to the communications console and looked at the microphone. With the innocent boldness that only children possess, she pressed the transmit button. "Are you lost too?" she asked. "When I get lost, my mom always finds me. Maybe we can help you find what you're looking for." The silence that followed lasted for nearly a minute. Daho was about to order communications cut when the first voice returned. But now it sounded completely different. The ancient weariness was gone, replaced by something like wonder. "Young one of the humans," the voice said carefully. "You would help us?" "Sure," Nari replied with a shrug. "That's what friends do." Daho watched his communications officer's face go pale. Minji reached for her daughter but stopped when she heard what came next. The sound was unlike anything human ears had ever heard. It started as a low harmonic tone, then built into something that could only be described as singing. But it was not just one voice. Across the entire alien fleet, thousands of beings were joining in this haunting melody. "They're crying." Nari said with the simple wisdom children sometimes possessed. They're happy and sad at the same time. The singing faded and the first voice returned. I am Commander Tisakar of the Drakmori fleet. For longer than your species has existed, we have searched the galaxy for what you call wonder. We had thought it lost forever. Deho found his voice. Commander, we welcome you to human space. But I must ask, what do you want from us? Not from you, Captain of Humans. From your young ones. They possess something we have forgotten, something we need to remember before we fade completely from existence. Nari tilted her head, looking confused. What did you forget? How to dream, young one. How to see beauty in things we have seen a million times. How to feel joy in simple moments. The child considered this seriously. That sounds sad. Dreams are the best part of sleeping. And everything is beautiful if you look at it right. Another pause. Then Commander Tisakar spoke again, and this time his ancient voice carried a note of hope. Perhaps, young one of the humans, you could teach us to see again. On the view screen, the massive alien ships began to move, but instead of forming battle formations, they arranged themselves in what looked almost like a protective circle around Earth. We pledge ourselves as guardians, Commander Tisakar announced, not as conquerors but as protectors of those who remember how to dream. Deho looked at young Nari, who was smiling at the speakers as if she could see the aliens through them. In the space of a few minutes, this 8-year-old girl had accomplished what no diplomat or military commander could have imagined. She had turned a potential invasion into an alliance through nothing more than childlike kindness. Welcome to our solar system, Commander, Deho said formally. We look forward to learning about each other. As do we, Captain. As do we. As Soul's Pride began its journey back to Earth to report this historic contact, Nari returned to her studies. She had no idea she had just changed the course of galactic history. To her, she had simply made new friends who needed help remembering how to be happy. Behind her, the adults began the complicated work of first contact protocols. But they all knew the real work had already been done by a child who saw wonder everywhere she looked. Dr. Choi In-soo adjusted his tie for the 5th time as he walked through the halls of UN Space Command headquarters in Geneva. As Earth's leading expert on alien life, he had dreamed of this moment for decades. But nothing in his studies had prepared him for what was happening now. 3 days had passed since the Drakmori fleet arrived at Earth. 3 days of careful messages back and forth, arranging this first formal meeting between species. The aliens had been patient, even gentle in their communications. They seemed more interested in talking about human children than discussing technology or territory. Ambassador Yu Hayoung walked beside him, her diplomatic training helping her stay calm, despite the historic nature of their mission. She had negotiated treaties between human colonies for 20 years, but this was different. This would determine humanity's place in a galaxy they were only beginning to understand. Remember, she said quietly as they approached the main conference room. Let them speak first. We need to understand what they really want. Dr. Choi nodded. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the Drakmori shuttle that had landed an hour earlier. It was beautiful in a way that human ships were not, flowing and organic like it had been grown rather than built. The conference room doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, 3 beings waited at the far end of a long table. Dr. Choi had seen images transmitted from Soul's Pride, but seeing the Drakmori in person was still breathtaking. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with skin that seemed to shimmer between dark blue and deep purple. Their faces were angular but not harsh, and their eyes held depths that spoke of ages beyond human understanding. They moved with fluid grace as if gravity affected them differently. The center figure stepped forward. I am Velthari, speaker for the Drakmori Council. We thank you for welcoming us to your world. Ambassador Yu bowed formally. I am Yu Hayoung, representing the United Nations of Earth. This is Dr. Choi In-soo, our expert on xenobiology. We are honored by your visit. The honor is ours, Velthari replied. We have waited so long to find others who still carry the spark. Dr. Choi leaned forward. The spark? What do you mean? Velthari's large eyes seemed to grow distant. Perhaps it is better to show you our nature first. We are old, Dr. Choi, far older than your species. When your ancestors first looked up at the stars, we had already forgotten what it felt like to wonder at their beauty. The alien moved to the large windows overlooking the courtyard below. Children from the nearby international school were playing during their lunch break, their laughter drifting up even through the soundproofed glass. We have lived for thousands of your years, Velthari continued. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched stars be born and die. We have accumulated knowledge and power beyond measure, but somewhere in all those centuries we lost something precious. Ambassador Yu exchanged glances with Dr. Choi. What did you lose? Joy, said another Drakmori speaking for the first time. The ability to see beauty in the moment. The capacity for hope. Down in the courtyard, a small commotion caught their attention. A boy, perhaps 6 years old, had dropped his lunch and was staring at it sadly. His friends gathered around him, and within moments they were sharing their food with him. The boy's tears turned to smiles. Velthari watched this simple scene with an intensity that surprised the humans. Your young ones, the alien said softly. They possess something we thought was lost forever in the universe. Dr. Choi was beginning to understand. You've been searching for hope, for wonder, for the ability to find meaning in small kindnesses, for dreams that make existence worthwhile rather than simply endless. The conference room doors opened again. Security Chief Kang Minho entered with an apologetic expression. Behind him walked his son Ji-hoon, clutching a piece of paper in his small hands. I'm sorry to interrupt, Kang Minho said. He insisted on coming. He said he had something important for the visitors. Young Ji-hoon looked up at the towering Drakmori without any fear. In his hand was a crayon drawing of their shuttle, rendered in bright colors with a rainbow arcing over it. At the bottom, in careful child handwriting, were the words, Welcome to Earth, Dragon Friends. The boy walked directly to Velthari and held up his drawing. I made this for you. I hope you like our planet. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. Velthari knelt down to the child's level, bringing the ancient being's face close to Ji-hoon's. The alien's large eyes began to glisten with what could only be tears. You made this for us? Velthari asked, voice trembling. Yes, Ji-hoon replied matter-of-factly. Dad says you came from very far away. I thought you might be homesick. This drawing shows that Earth wants to be your friend too. Velthari reached out with careful, reverent hands and accepted the drawing. The other two Drakmori moved closer, studying the simple crayon art as if it were the most valuable treasure in the galaxy. It has been 3,000 years, Velthari whispered, since anyone gave us a gift simply because they wanted us to be happy. Dr. Choi felt his scientific mind reeling. These beings had technology that could cross interstellar space instantly, yet they were moved to tears by a child's drawing. How is this possible? You're one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Advanced, yes, Velthari replied, still holding Ji-hoon's drawing. But we became so focused on surviving, on growing, on learning, that we forgot why survival mattered. We forgot that knowledge without joy is merely data, that power without love is only force. The alien stood and looked at the assembled humans. Your children see the universe as we once did, before time wore away our capacity for awe. When your young one Nari asked if we were lost, she spoke truth we had not admitted to ourselves. We have been lost for millennia. Ambassador Yu spoke carefully. What do you hope to gain from us? Not to gain, Velthari corrected. To remember, to learn again how to find wonder in a sunset, joy in friendship, hope in tomorrow. Your children possess what we call the spark, the flame that makes existence beautiful rather than merely functional. Ji-hoon tugged on Velthari's robes. Are you sad because you forgot how to be happy? The ancient being looked down at the child with infinite gentleness. Yes, young one, but perhaps with your help we can remember. That's easy, Ji-hoon said with 6-year-old confidence. You just have to look for good things every day, like how pretty the sky looks, or how nice it feels when someone smiles at you. Dr. Choi watched in amazement as this simple advice from a child seemed to impact beings who had lived for thousands of years. The Drakmori exchanged looks filled with something he had not seen in their communications before. Hope. We wish to propose an alliance, Velthari announced. Not of nations or militaries, but of spirits. We will share our knowledge and protection. In return, we ask only for the chance to learn from your young ones, to remember what we have forgotten. Ambassador Yu considered this carefully. You're offering to protect humanity in exchange for spending time with our children? We offer to serve as guardians of those who still dream, Velthari replied. For in protecting your children, we protect the last source of wonder we have found in this galaxy. As the formal negotiations began, young Ji-hoon sat quietly in a corner, drawing more pictures for his new alien friends. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness had just secured humanity's place among the stars. The galaxy had found its dreamers, and the dreamers had found their guardians. Dr. Choi In-soo stood at the observation deck of the human transport ship, watching the Drakmori homeworld grow larger in the viewport. Kethmoran was unlike anything he had imagined. The planet gleamed like a jewel, covered in crystal spires that reached toward the sky like frozen music. Cities sprawled across continents in perfect geometric patterns, connected by streams of light that pulsed with unknown energy. It was beautiful. It was also completely silent. No electromagnetic chatter, reported the ship's communications officer. No commercial broadcasts, no entertainment signals, no casual conversation networks. Just official traffic between administrative centers. Dr. Seo Jiwoo joined him at the viewport. The child psychologist had been quiet during the 3-day journey, studying the data packets the Drakmori had shared about their world. What she had learned troubled her deeply. A planet of 50 billion beings, she said softly, and not a single voice of a child. Behind them, 9-year-old Shin Dabin pressed her nose against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She was the daughter of engineer Shin Tae-hyun, who had been selected for this diplomatic mission because of his expertise in advanced construction techniques. But Dabin was here for a different reason entirely. After the success of young Ji-hoon's drawing, the Drakmori had specifically requested that human children be included in the cultural exchange. They wanted to understand what made the young ones so special. Dabin had volunteered eagerly, excited about visiting an alien world. "It looks like a giant toy city," she announced, "like someone built the most beautiful dollhouse ever and made it planet-sized." Dr. Choi smiled at her innocent description, but he noticed how the Drakmori escort, Elder Zeftorn, reacted to her words. The ancient being's expression grew even more melancholy. "A dollhouse," Zeftorn repeated quietly. "Yes, that is perhaps accurate. Beautiful, perfect, and empty of life's true purpose." The transport ship descended toward the capital city of Morthalan. As they drew closer, the magnificent architecture became even more impressive. Buildings twisted skyward in spirals of living crystal, their surfaces reflecting light in patterns that shifted like slow kaleidoscopes. Gardens floated in mid-air, suspended by technology that seemed like magic, but something was wrong. Dr. Seo Jiwoo noticed it first. "Where are the parks?" she asked. "The playgrounds? Schools should have outdoor spaces for children to run and play." Zeftorn turned away from the viewport. "We have not needed such things for a very long time." The ship landed at a spaceport that could have held 1,000 vessels Earth-size. Yet they were the only ship there. Drakmori officials waited to greet them, their movements precise and formal. Everything was efficient, orderly, and somehow deeply sad. Young Dabin bounded down the ramp with the energy typical of her age, looking around at everything with wide eyes. "Wow, it's like being inside a rainbow. Dad, look at how the buildings change colors." Shin Tae-hyun followed his daughter, trying to keep his engineer's mind focused on the technical marvels around them, while also watching Dabin's safety. The welcoming committee of Drakmori officials watched the child with expressions of fascination and pain. "Welcome to Kethmoran," announced the lead official. "I am Archive Keeper Kyle Andreas. I will serve as your guide during your stay." Dr. Choi noticed that Kyle Andreas appeared younger than the other Drakmori they had met. When he asked about it, the answer was disturbing. "Young by our standards, yes," Kyle Andreas replied. "I have lived only 800 of your years." "Only 800, Dr. Seo Jiwoo murmured. "What do you consider old?" "Elder Zeftorn has seen 50,000 years pass. Some of our ancients remember when this galaxy was young." Dabin skipped ahead of the group, her backpack bouncing as she pointed at various wonders. "What's that floating garden for? Who lives in those tall crystal towers? Where do the children go to school?" Each innocent question seemed to hit the Drakmori like physical blows. Finally, Kyle Andreas stopped walking and knelt down to Dabin's level. "Young human," he said gently. "There are no children here. There have been no children on Kethmoran for over 10,000 years." Dabin's eyes widened. "No kids at all? That's impossible. Who's going to grow up to be the next grown-ups? We no longer produce offspring. When you live for tens of thousands of years, reproduction becomes unnecessary. Eventually, it simply stopped." Dr. Seo Jiwoo felt a chill of understanding. "How long since the last Drakmori child was born?" 12,407 years, Zeftorn answered with painful precision. Her name was Lilandra. She was the last spark of new life our people produced. Dabin looked confused and sad. But who tells you bedtime stories? Who asks funny questions? Who gets excited about finding pretty rocks? The question hung in the air like a judgment. Around them, the crystal spires continued their slow color changes, beautiful and empty. Their tour continued through the city. They visited libraries that contained the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds, laboratories where Drakmori scientists worked on projects that would take centuries to complete, and art galleries displaying masterpieces from across the galaxy. Everything was perfect, preserved and lifeless. It was in the Hall of Memory that Dabin made her discovery. The vast chamber held holographic displays showing Kethmaran's history. Dabin wandered among the exhibits while the adults discussed technical details with their guides. She stopped at one display that showed scenes from the planet's ancient past. "Hey," she called out, "this one's different." The others joined her at the display. The hologram showed Kethmaran as it had been millions of years ago. The same crystal spires rose toward the sky. But something was fundamentally different. The spaces between buildings were filled with smaller figures. Young Drakmori, playing games that looked remarkably similar to human children's activities. "You had kids then?" Dabin observed. "Lots of them. They look happy." Kyle Andreas stared at the ancient images as if seeing them for the first time. "I had forgotten," he whispered. "We had forgotten what we once were." Dr. Seojiwu studied the display more carefully. "These children, they're doing the same things human children do. Playing, exploring, creating." "Before we became immortal," Zeftorn said slowly, "before we extended our lives beyond natural limits, we were like you. We dreamed, we hoped, we saw each day as an adventure." Dabin pressed buttons on the display console with the fearless curiosity of childhood. More images appeared showing young Drakmori asking questions of their elders, creating art, laughing together. The contrast with the silent present was heartbreaking. "What happened?" Dr. Choi asked. "Immortality," Zeftorn replied. "We thought it was a gift. We believed that endless life would let us achieve perfection. Instead, it gave us endless time to become bored with existence. When you know you will live forever, nothing seems urgent. When nothing is urgent, nothing seems important." Dabin had found audio recordings from the ancient displays. Suddenly, the hall filled with something that had not been heard on Kethmaran for millennia. The sound of children laughing. The effect on the Drakmori was immediate and overwhelming. Kyle Andreas fell to his knees, his body shaking. Zeftorn pressed his hands to his face, tears flowing freely. Other Drakmori throughout the hall stopped their activities and turned toward the sound with expressions of profound loss. "We chose to stop having children because we thought they were no longer necessary," Kyle Andreas said through his tears. "We had all the time in the universe to learn and grow. What need was there for new voices, new perspectives, new dreams? But dreams weren't about time," Dabin said with the simple wisdom that only children possessed. "Dreams are about seeing things in new ways. If everyone thinks the same way, there can't be any new dreams." Dr. Seojiwu knelt beside the grieving alien. "You gave up renewal for permanence. You chose preservation over growth. And in doing so," Zeftorn added, "we preserved everything except the reason for living." Dabin walked over to the crying Drakmori and patted Kyle Andreas gently on the shoulder. "It's okay," she said. "You found us, didn't you? And we have lots of kids. Maybe we can help you remember how to be happy again." The young Drakmori looked up at her with eyes that held centuries of sorrow. "Do you truly believe it is possible? After so long?" "Sure," Dabin replied with absolute confidence. "My dad says you can learn anything if you really want to, and being happy is the easiest thing to learn because it feels so good." As they prepared to leave the Hall of Memory, Dr. Choi realized they had discovered something more important than any technology or treasure. They had found the source of the Drakmori's desperate search across the galaxy. These beings had achieved everything they thought they wanted: immortality, perfect knowledge, flawless technology. But in gaining eternity, they had lost the very thing that made eternity worth having. They had lost their future, and now, in human children, they had found hope that it might not be too late to get it back. Dr. Oh Seung-hwan watched his daughter Lim Sua paint watercolor pictures at the small table in their quarters, aboard Titan Research Station. The joint human-Drakmori facility had been built in record time, a symbol of the growing cooperation between their species. 3 months had passed since the visit to Kethmoran, and the project to understand the connection between human children and Drakmori renewal was making steady progress. "Dad," Sua said, without looking up from her painting, "why do the dragon people always look so sad when they think nobody is watching?" Dr. O paused in his review of the day's research data. His 7-year-old daughter had an uncanny ability to notice things that adults missed. Since arriving at the station, she had become a favorite among the Drakmori researchers, who seemed drawn to her endless curiosity and bright laughter. "They've been sad for a very long time, sweetheart," he replied. "We're trying to help them remember how to be happy." "That's silly," Sua said matter-of-factly. "Being happy is easy. You just have to find something beautiful every day." From the corner of the room, Drakmori scientist Mordecai looked up from his work. The ancient being had been studying human child development for weeks, trying to understand what made their young ones so different from the immortal adults of his own species. "Easy, young Sua?" Mordecai asked. "Even when life becomes difficult or painful?" "Especially then," Sua replied with the confidence only children possess. "When things are bad, you need beautiful things even more." Dr. O smiled at his daughter's simple wisdom. Sua had been adopted 3 years ago after her birth parents died in a transport accident. Despite the tragedy in her young life, she remained one of the most optimistic people he knew. The door to their quarters chimed, and Commander Thisakar entered. The Drakmori leader had become a regular visitor to the research station, drawn by the progress being made in understanding human children. "Dr. O," Thisakar said with the formal courtesy that marked all Drakmori interactions, "I hope to observe today's experiments." "Of course, Commander. We're testing Sua's reaction to historical holographic displays. The preliminary results are fascinating." They moved to the main laboratory where a sophisticated holographic projector had been set up. The device could create 3-dimensional images so realistic they seemed solid. Dr. O had programmed it with historical data from both Earth and Kethmoran. "Ready for another adventure, Sua?" he asked. The little girl clapped her hands excitedly. "Can we see the dinosaurs again? Or maybe the castle with all the pretty flags?" Dr. O activated the projector, and the room filled with images of medieval Earth. Knights rode through countryside villages while children played in cobblestone streets. Sua walked among the holograms, reaching out to touch images that weren't really there. "Look, Dad," she called out. "The kids from long ago played the same games we do. Tag and hide and seek and everything." Mordecai watched with intense interest. "She sees connections across time," he observed. "Patterns that unite rather than separate." "Now let's try something different," Dr. O said. He switched the display to show ancient Kethmoran, back when Drakmori children still existed. Sua gasped with delight as young Drakmori appeared around her, playing games among crystal gardens that glowed with inner light. "Oh, they're beautiful. Look how they make the crystals sing when they touch them." Commander Thisakar stepped closer, his ancient eyes fixed on scenes from his people's distant past. "I remember," he whispered. "I was once among those children." "Really?" Sua asked, turning to look up at the towering alien. "What was your favorite game?" "We would race the light streams between the city spires," Thisakar replied, his voice growing soft with memory. "The winner got to choose the song that all the crystals would sing at sunset." "That sounds wonderful. Can you still do that?" The commander's expression grew sad. "The crystals no longer respond to us. They have been silent for thousands of years." Sua tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe they're waiting for you to remember how to play." Dr. O was about to switch to the next historical display when something unexpected happened. Sua began moving her hands through the holographic images, but instead of simply watching the programmed scenes, she started changing them. Her childlike movements somehow accessed the projector's creative subroutines. New images began to appear, mixing elements from different time periods. She combined the playing children of ancient Earth with the crystal gardens of old Kethmoran, creating scenes that had never existed, but somehow felt perfectly natural. "Sa, how are you doing that?" Dr. O asked in amazement. "I'm just imagining what it would be like if we could all play together," she replied, still moving her hands to create new holographic scenes. "Look, the Earth kids are teaching the Dragon kids how to play hopscotch, and the Dragon kids are showing them how to make crystal flowers." Commander Thisakar stared at the impossible images surrounding him. Young humans and young Drakmori playing together in gardens that sparkled with light and laughter. It was a vision of something that could never have happened, yet seemed more real than the sterile present of his homeworld. "This is what we lost," he said, his voice breaking. "Not just our children, but the ability to imagine new possibilities. To dream of what could be rather than simply remembering what was." Mordecai was frantically taking readings from his instruments. "The holographic matrix is responding to her emotional resonance," he reported. "She's somehow directing the system through pure imagination." But Sua wasn't finished. Her latest creation showed Kethmoran as it might be in the future. The crystal spires still reached toward the sky, but now they were filled with the sounds of laughter. Drakmori and human children played together in floating gardens, their joy causing the ancient crystals to sing with renewed life. "This is what it could look like," she said simply, "if you had kids again and if we all lived together as friends." Commander Thissakar fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the vision. "It's impossible," he whispered. "We are too old, too set in our ways. We have forgotten how to create new life." "But you remembered how to play crystal songs," Sua pointed out. "That means you can remember other things, too." Dr. O watched in stunned silence as his daughter continued to manipulate the holographic display. She was creating something that no adult mind could have conceived, a perfect blend of wonder and possibility that seemed to bypass logic and speak directly to the heart. "Commander," he said quietly, "I think my daughter just showed us something crucial. The reason human children affect your people so strongly isn't just because they possess wonder. It's because they possess the ability to imagine new realities." Thissakar looked up from where he knelt among the holographic images. "New realities? Children don't just see what is," Dr. O explained. "They see what could be. They take existing elements and recombine them in ways that adults would dismiss as impossible." Mordecai nodded eagerly. "And imagination is the seed of all change. Without it, immortality becomes merely endless repetition." Sua had finished her holographic creation. Around them, the images showed a future where both species had learned from each other, where the wisdom of ages combined with the fresh perspective of youth, where crystal spires sang with the laughter of children who would grow up to dream new dreams. "Do you like it?" she asked Commander Thissakar. The ancient being reached out with trembling hands toward the images of Drakmori children who might someday exist. "It is the most beautiful thing I have seen in 10,000 years, he replied. "Then let's make it real," Sua said with the absolute confidence that only a child could possess. As the holographic display faded, Commander Thissakar made a decision that would change the future of both species. He activated his communication device and sent a message to the Drakmori High Council. "My fellow ancients," he transmitted, "I have seen our future. It is time to remember not just how to feel, but how to hope. It is time to consider the possibility of new life among the stars." Dr. O put his arm around his daughter's shoulders as they watched the commander walk away to begin the most important conversation in Drakmori history. Sua had done more than create pretty pictures. She had shown an entire species that the future didn't have to be a repetition of the past. She had taught them to dream again. 5-year-old Han Woo-jin sat on his bedroom floor, building a tower out of colorful blocks while his mother Lee Sun-hee worked at her desk nearby. The Colonial Administration Office on New Busan was quiet today, with most of the planet's 12,000 settlers going about their usual routines. Outside the windows, 2 suns cast double shadows across the farming districts that stretched to the horizon. Woo-jin hummed a little song as he stacked his blocks higher and higher. He liked living on New Busan because there was so much space to run and play, and because the pretty lights in the sky at night were different from the ones he remembered from Earth. "Mom," he said without looking up from his building project, "why are there big ships hiding behind the mountain?" Lee Sun-hee glanced up from her reports. "What ships, sweetheart?" "The scary-looking ones. They've been there since yesterday. They keep moving when they think nobody is watching." Something cold settled in Lee Sun-hee's stomach. She walked to the window and activated her enhanced viewing scope, scanning the mountain range to the east. At first she saw nothing unusual. Then her scope detected energy signatures that definitely didn't belong to human technology. She grabbed her emergency communicator. "Nam Kyung-soo, this is Lee Sun-hee. I need you in my office immediately." Defense Coordinator Nam Kyung-soo arrived within minutes, his face grim. He was a former Earth military officer who had volunteered for colonial duty to give his family a better life. Now he wished he had stayed in the safer inner systems, How many ships? He asked as he adjusted the viewing scope. At least 6 that I can detect, Lee Sun-hee replied. Possibly more using stealth technology. Nam Kyung-soo cursed under his breath. New Busan had minimal defenses, just enough to handle pirates or wild animal problems. They were never intended to face a military threat. Have you contacted the Drakmori? He asked. I sent a priority message to Commander Thysakar 10 minutes ago. No response yet. Wu Jin looked up from his blocks, sensing the tension in the room. Are the scary ships going to hurt us? Before either adult could answer, the communicator crackled to life. A harsh reptilian voice filled the room, speaking accented but understandable human language. Humans of the farming world. The voice hissed. I am War Prince Uskatar of the Vorthan Empire. You will surrender your young ones to our custody immediately. Lee Sun-hee pulled Wu Jin closer to her side. The Vorthans were known throughout human space as aggressive slavers, who captured members of other species for forced labor, but they had never specifically demanded children before. Why do you want our children? Nam Kyung-soo demanded into the communicator. The galaxy speaks of your young ones' special qualities, Uskatar replied. The ancient Drakmori bow to human children like they are gods. We will discover what makes them so valuable. The children are under our protection, Lee Sun-hee said firmly. We will not surrender them. The War Prince's laughter was cold and cruel. You have no weapons to stop us, Administrator. Your choice is simple. Give us the young ones willingly, or we will take them after we burn your settlements. The communication cut off, leaving the office in tense silence. Wu Jin tugged on his mother's sleeve. Mom, are the dragon people coming to help us? Lee Sun-hee looked out at the peaceful farming community, where families had built new lives for themselves and their children. 3,000 kids lived on New Busan, ranging from babies to teenagers. The thought of them being taken by alien slavers made her feel sick with fear. I hope so, baby, she whispered. I really hope so. Nam Kyung-soo was already activating the colony's emergency alert system. All families to designated shelters immediately. This is not a drill. All families to shelters now. Across the colony, parents grabbed their children and ran for the underground bunkers that had been built for meteor impacts and severe weather. The Vorthan ships dropped their stealth and moved into attack positions, their weapon systems charging with visible energy. Wu Jin pressed his face against the shelter window, watching the dark shapes in the sky grow larger. They look mean, he said simply. Lee Sun-hee held him tighter. Around them, dozens of other families huddled together, parents trying to comfort frightened children while hiding their own terror. The shelter's communication system crackled with reports from the surface. 6 confirmed Vorthan battleships, Nam Kyung-soo reported. They're demanding we send the children to the landing zone in 1 hour or they begin bombardment. That's when the space around New Busan began to shimmer. The first Drakmori ship appeared directly between the colony and the Vorthan fleet, then another, then 10 more. Within minutes, 30 massive vessels surrounded the small farming world, their crystalline hulls gleaming like captured starlight. The lead Drakmori ship opened communication channels to both the colony and the Vorthan fleet. I am Battle Elder Kethmaros of the Drakmori Defense Fleet, announced a voice filled with ancient authority and barely controlled rage. You have threatened the young ones under our protection. Withdraw immediately. War Prince Uskatar's response was defiant. The Drakmori are known as philosophers, not warriors. You will not risk galactic war over a few human children. You are mistaken, Kethmaros replied, and something in his tone made even the adults in the shelter shiver. We are indeed philosophers. But before we learned to think, we learned to protect what matters most. The Vorthan ships opened fire first, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly energy. The Drakmori response was swift and overwhelming. Weapons that had been silent for millennia awakened with terrible beauty, sending streams of crystalline light that tore through Vorthan's shields like paper. But this was not mere destruction. As the Drakmori ships fought, they sang. The battle song could be heard even in the underground shelters, a haunting melody that seemed to make the very air vibrate with protective power. It was a lullaby of war, a promise sung in harmonies that human ears could barely comprehend. Wu Jin listened to the strange music and smiled. The dragon people are singing the scary ships to sleep. In a way, he was right. The Vorthan vessels began shutting down one by one, their crews overwhelmed by sonic frequencies that induced immediate unconsciousness. Within 20 minutes, the entire enemy fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Young ones of New Busan, came Battle Elder Kethmaros's voice through the shelter's speakers. You are safe. The threat has passed. The colonists emerged from their shelters to find the sky filled with Drakmori ships arranged in protective formations. On the ground, crystalline gardens had sprouted around every shelter entrance, their soft light providing comfort to the frightened children. Wu Jin ran to one of the crystal formations and pressed his small hand against its surface. Immediately, gentle music began to play and the crystal glowed warmer. They left us presents, he announced to his mother. Pretty singing stones to make us feel better. Lee Sun-hee watched her son play fearlessly among the alien crystals, while Drakmori ships stood guard overhead. The contrast was striking, the most powerful beings in the galaxy serving as protectors for children who saw their gifts as toys. Commander Thesakar's ship landed near the main settlement, and the ancient leader emerged to address the colonists personally. People of New Busan, he announced, we failed to prevent this threat from reaching you. This will not happen again. You saved us, Lee Sun-hee replied. We're grateful for your protection. No, Thesakar said firmly. You should never have been in danger. From this day forward, Drakmori fleets will patrol all worlds where human children live. Any who threaten the young ones will face our full wrath. Nam Kyung-soo stepped forward. Commander, we appreciate your offer, but we can't ask you to guard every human colony. You do not ask, Thesakar replied. We choose. Your children are the most precious things in this galaxy. Protecting them is not a burden, but a privilege. As the Drakmori ships took up permanent patrol positions around New Busan, Wu Jin continued playing with his crystal flowers. He had no idea that the battle above his world had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Word of the Vorthan defeat spread quickly through space. The message was clear. Threatening human children meant facing the full might of the Drakmori fleet. Slavers and pirates began avoiding human space entirely, unwilling to risk the wrath of beings who could sing enemy ships to sleep. But more importantly, the Drakmori had discovered something they thought they had lost forever, the fierce joy of having something worth fighting for. Protecting human children didn't just give them purpose, it gave them back their hearts. In shelters across New Busan, parents tucked their children into bed while crystal guardians sang gentle lullabies outside their windows. The galaxy had learned that humanity's young ones were under the protection of dragons who remembered how to love, and that made all the difference in the universe. President Hwang Mi-jin sat in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, reviewing reports that troubled her deeply. 6 months had passed since the Vorthan attack on New Busan, and the consequences were spreading throughout human space in ways nobody had predicted. The Drakmori protection of human children had brought unexpected benefits. Trade routes were safer than ever, with alien pirates avoiding any system where human families lived. Scientific cooperation had accelerated, with Drakmori sharing technologies that would advance human civilization by centuries, but it had also brought problems. Madam President, said her chief of staff as he entered with another stack of files, we have 3 more protests scheduled for this week. The adult liberation movement is gaining supporters in the outer colonies. President Hwang sighed. The adult liberation movement claimed that humanity was becoming too dependent on alien protection, and that focusing so much attention on children was creating an unhealthy society. Some even accused parents of exploiting their children's special relationship with the Drakmori for political gain. What about the economic reports from the core worlds? She asked. Tourism to Earth has increased by 400%. Every family in the galaxy wants to visit the homeworld of the species that can make ancient aliens weep with joy. But our infrastructure wasn't designed for this level of traffic. President Hwang walked to her window, watching ships from dozens of alien species landing at the expanded spaceports below. Earth had become a pilgrimage destination, with beings traveling from across the galaxy just to observe human children at play. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of joining galactic civilization as equals. Now they were the most sought-after species in known space, but only because of their children. Her secure communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. The face of Professor Baek Yunwoo appeared on the screen, and he looked deeply worried. Madam President, he said without preamble, my daughter has made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about the Drakmori. 10-year-old Baek Jinsol had spent the morning in her father's research library, reading through ancient texts that the Drekmori had shared with human scholars. Unlike the adults who focused on technical specifications and historical data, Jinsol read the stories and poetry that revealed how the Drekmori truly felt about their long existence. "Dad," she called from across the library, "I found something scary." Professor Beck looked up from his translation work. His daughter had proven remarkably good at understanding Drekmori cultural references that baffled adult researchers. Her childlike perspective often revealed meanings that scholarly analysis missed. "What did you find, sweetheart?" Jinsol brought him a data tablet displaying a Drekmori poem written 10,000 years ago. The translation software had rendered it into human language, but the meaning was still unclear to most adults. "This poem talks about burning bright instead of fading slow," she explained. "At first I thought it was just pretty words. But look at this part." She pointed to a section that described how feeling emotions again was like fire consuming the ancient wood of our extended years. Professor Bayek read the passage more carefully and felt his blood run cold as he began to understand what his daughter had discovered. "The Drekmori aren't just becoming more emotional," he said slowly. "Their renewed feelings are somehow affecting their longevity. They're choosing to feel things even though it's making them die faster," Jinsol said with the simple clarity that children brought to complex problems. "They think it's worth it." Professor Beck immediately contacted President Huang with his daughter's discovery. Within hours, leading xenobiologists and Drekmori cultural experts were analyzing the implications. The truth was sobering. The Drekmori's extended lifespans had been maintained through emotional suppression. By awakening their capacity for joy, wonder, and protective love, they were essentially choosing mortality over immortality. Dr. Choi In-soo presented the findings to an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, based on our analysis of Drekmori biological data, he reported. Their renewed emotional range is burning through their life energy at an accelerated rate. Ancient beings who might have lived for hundreds of thousands more years may now have only centuries remaining. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The most powerful species in the galaxy was sacrificing their immortality for the chance to feel alive again. General Chen Mayangho, head of Earth Defense Forces, spoke first. "Are you telling us that by awakening their emotions we're essentially killing them?" "Not killing," Dr. Choi corrected. "They're choosing to live fully rather than exist emptily. But yes, the cost is their extended lifespans." President Huang felt the weight of leadership pressing down on her. "Do they know? Do the Drekmori understand what's happening to them?" Before Dr. Choi could answer, the chamber doors opened. Commander Thisakar entered, accompanied by several other high-ranking Drekmori. Their presence in the UN chambers was unprecedented, but their expressions suggested they had come for a crucial conversation. "We know," Commander Thisakar said simply. "We have always known." The human leaders stared at the ancient being who had just confirmed their worst fears. "You knew that protecting our children would shorten your lives?" President Huang asked. "We knew that feeling again would cost us time," Thisakar replied. "What we did not know was whether it would be worth the price." He moved to the chamber's main view screen and activated a display showing images from across human space. Children playing in Drekmori crystal gardens, young humans and ancient aliens working together on research projects, families living safely under the protection of beings older than their entire civilization. "The answer," he continued, "is that every moment of renewed feeling is worth 1,000 years of empty existence." Elder Rio Hasta, one of the oldest Drekmori present, stepped forward. His movements were slower than usual, and there was something fragile about his appearance that hadn't been there months earlier. "I have lived for 60,000 of your years," he said. "In all that time I had forgotten what joy felt like until I heard a human child laugh. Now I remember why existence is precious." "But you're dying," President Huang protested. "We can't be responsible for shortening your lives." "You are not shortening our lives," Riohasta replied gently. "You are giving them meaning. We chose emptiness for eternity. Now we choose purpose for whatever time remains." Young Jinsol, who had been quietly listening from her father's side, spoke up with the innocent boldness that only children possessed. "Are you scared?" she asked the ancient beings. Thisakar knelt down to her level. "No, young one. For the first time in millennia, We are not afraid. We have remembered what makes existence beautiful. But what happens when you're all gone? Jinsol asked with practical concern. Who will protect the other kids? The Drakmori exchanged glances filled with something humans were only now learning to recognize in their expressions. Hope. That, said Thesakar, is why we have made another choice. We are attempting something that has not been tried in 12,000 years. Professor Bayek leaned forward. What choice? We are trying to remember how to create new life. If we can have children again, they will grow up knowing both the wisdom of ages and the joy of youth. They will be the guardians of tomorrow. Dr. Choi's eyes widened as he understood the implications. You're trying to reproduce again. With human children as our teachers, Thesakar confirmed. They are showing us how to see the universe with fresh eyes. Perhaps they can also teach us how to create fresh possibilities. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs as the humans began to grasp what the Drakmori were proposing. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about renewal for both species. But young Jinsol had a simpler reaction. She walked over to Elder Riohasta and took his ancient hand in her small one. Don't be sad about getting old, she said. Even if you can't live forever, you can still live happily. And maybe your kids will remember the happy parts best. The ancient being looked down at the child whose species had given his people back their hearts and smiled with genuine joy. Yes, young teacher, he replied. Perhaps they will. As the meeting continued, President Huang realized that humanity faced a choice that would define their future relationship with the galaxy. They could accept the Drakmori's sacrifice and the responsibility that came with it, or they could try to return to the isolation of emotional emptiness. But watching her advisors' faces as they discussed the possibility of Drakmori children learning alongside human ones, she knew the choice had already been made. Some gifts were worth any price, and some partnerships transcended the fear of loss to embrace the hope of renewal. 8-year-old Chaminsu held his father's hand tightly as they walked through the corridors of Sanctuary Station toward the Grand Assembly Hall. The neutral space station was the largest structure humans had ever seen, built by a coalition of alien species as a meeting place for galactic government. Today, it would host the most important decision in human history. Ambassador Cha Young-ho looked down at his son with mixed feelings. He had brought Minsu to countless diplomatic meetings over the years, believing that children should understand the world they would inherit. But he had never imagined that his 8-year-old boy would play a crucial role in determining humanity's future. Dad, Minsu said quietly, why do all the alien people look angry? Through the transparent walls of the corridor, they could see representatives from dozens of species gathering in the assembly hall. The Galactic Confederation had called this emergency session after months of growing tension about the human-Drakmori alliance. They're not angry at you, son, Ambassador Cha replied. They're worried about how things are changing in the galaxy. The truth was more complicated than he could explain to a child. The Drakmori's fierce protection of human children had disrupted the balance of power that had existed for millennia. Other species felt threatened by an alliance they couldn't understand or control. As they entered the assembly hall, Minsu's eyes widened at the sight before him. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the vast chamber, their varied forms creating a tapestry of alien life. At the center, the Drakmori delegation sat in solemn dignity, their crystalline forms seeming to glow with inner light. Admiral Lee Deho, now Earth's senior military representative, approached them with a grim expression. Ambassador, the situation is worse than we thought. Chancellor Vexmiran is demanding complete separation of human children from Drakmori contact. On what grounds? Ambassador Cha asked. They claim the relationship is unhealthy for both species. They're calling it emotional dependency that threatens galactic stability. Minsu tugged on his father's sleeve. What does that mean? It means some people think our friendship with the dragon people is causing problems, Ambassador Cha explained simply. The assembly was called to order by Chancellor Vexmiran, a tall being with silver skin and multiple arms who served as the Confederation's current leader. Her voice carried clearly through the hall's advanced sound system. Representatives of the Galactic Confederation, she announced. We gather to address a crisis that threatens the stability of our civilization. The alliance between humans and Drakmori has created dangerous precedents that cannot be allowed to continue. She activated a holographic display showing images from across human space. Drakmori ships protecting human colonies, ancient beings playing with human children, crystal gardens sprouting around schools and playgrounds. The Drakmori were once the galaxy's most stable species, Chancellor Vexmiran continued. Their emotional neutrality made them ideal peacekeepers and advisors, but their contact with human children has made them unpredictable, aggressive, and unstable. Admiral Lee Deho stood to respond. The Drakmori have committed no acts of aggression except in defense of innocent children. Their protection has made human space safer than ever before. Protection that comes at the cost of their rationality, the Chancellor replied. Our scientists report that Drakmori emotional awakening is shortening their lifespans dramatically. This alliance is literally killing them. A murmur ran through the assembly as representatives discussed this revelation. Many had not known about the cost the Drakmori were paying for their renewed emotions. Furthermore, the Chancellor continued, human children are being raised to believe they are special, chosen beings who deserve the worship of ancient aliens. This is creating a generation of humans who expect preferential treatment from all species. Ambassador Cha felt his anger rising. But before he could respond, a new voice spoke from the Drakmori section. May I address the assembly? Ancient One Pirthalos rose slowly from his seat. He was the eldest Drakmori present, so old that his exact age was unknown even to his own people. His appearance had changed noticeably since the emotional awakening began, becoming more fragile but somehow more alive. Honored Ancient, Chancellor Vexmiran said with formal respect. You may speak. Pirthalos moved with careful dignity to the center of the hall. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of eons but also a warmth that had not been there before his people's awakening. Esteemed representatives, he began, you speak of our alliance with humanity as if it were a disease that has infected us. You suggest that feeling again has made us weak, unstable, dangerous. He paused, looking around the vast assembly with eyes that had seen galaxies born and die. You are correct that we are dying. Our renewed emotions burn through the extended years we had hoarded like fire through ancient wood. But you do not understand what we have gained. The hall fell completely silent as the Ancient continued. For 50,000 years I existed without purpose. I accumulated knowledge, wielded power, maintained order, but I had forgotten why any of it mattered. I was already dead, merely too stubborn to stop moving. His gaze found young Minsu in the human delegation, and his ancient features softened with something that could only be called love. Then a human child asked if we were lost. Another offered us a drawing made with her own small hands. A third showed us how to imagine new possibilities. They did not worship us. They simply included us in their wonder at existence. Pirthalos raised his voice, filling the hall with passion that surprised everyone present. Yes, we are dying faster now. Yes, we have become emotional and unpredictable. But we are finally truly alive. We have remembered why survival matters, why knowledge has value, why existence is worth protecting. Chancellor Vexmiran stepped forward. Ancient One, we respect your choice, but we cannot allow this instability to spread. The Confederation demands that human children be placed under neutral protection, removed from Drakmori influence for the good of all species. The assembly erupted in debate as various species voiced their opinions. Some supported the separation, others argued for the alliance. The noise grew so loud that individual voices became impossible to distinguish. That's when Minsu slipped away from his father's side. The small boy walked through the chaos of the assembly hall, past arguing aliens 3 times his size until he reached the center where Ancient One Pirthalos stood. The old being noticed him immediately and knelt down to the child's level. Minsu had been taught the formal words for addressing powerful beings, the phrases diplomats used when requesting mercy or consideration. He looked up at the Ancient One who had lived longer than human civilization had existed, and spoke the words his father had taught him. Spare my life, he whispered. But instead of granting mercy as protocol demanded, Pirthalos did something that stunned the entire assembly into silence. The timeworn dragon bent in solemn respect, bowing his ancient head to the small human child. No, young teacher, he replied in a voice that carried to every corner of the vast hall. It is I who ask you to spare mine. You have given me back my soul. You have taught me to feel wonder again. You have shown me that existence can be beautiful. The Ancient One straightened and addressed the assembly one final time. Members of the Confederation, you ask us to choose between stability and joy, between safety and meaning. We have made our choice. We choose to burn bright and brief rather than cold and eternal. He placed a gentle hand on Minsu's shoulder. We choose to protect the dreamers, even if it costs us our immortality. We choose love over emptiness, wonder over safety, hope over fear. Commander Thysakar stood and added his voice to the declaration. The Drakmori fleet will continue to guard human children. We will share our knowledge freely, and if any species threatens the young ones under our protection, they will face our full wrath. Chancellor Vexmirin looked around the assembly, reading the reactions of the various delegations. Many species were moved by what they had witnessed. Others remained concerned about the implications. The Confederation cannot force this separation, she admitted finally. But we warn that this alliance changes everything. The galaxy will never be the same. Good, said Ancient One Pirthalos with a smile that transformed his ancient features. Change means growth. Growth means life. Life means hope. As the assembly dispersed, Minsu walked back to his father, unaware that his simple words had just reshaped galactic civilization. Ambassador Cha knelt down to hug his son. Do you understand what just happened? He asked. Minsu thought about it seriously. The dragon people decided that being happy is more important than living forever. And they want to keep protecting kids like me. That's right. How do you feel about that? Minsu smiled with the uncomplicated joy that had started this entire transformation. I think it's nice that they want to be our friends, and maybe someday they'll have little dragon kids too. And we can all play together. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Ancient One Pirthalos approached them one last time. Young Minsu, he said, you spoke words asking me to spare your life. But you have it backwards. It is your life, your wonder, your dreams that have spared mine from meaningless eternity.